And away we go, episode 1232 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Tuesday, January 6th, 2026. It is the day after the first full day of the Washington Commanders' 2026 offseason. And we, on that first full day of the offseason, Monday, had a lot going on, including a session for quarterback Jayden Daniels with reporters on Monday morning and a joint season-ending press conference for general manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn on Monday evening. A lot was said about a lot. Heck, we even got a joke from Adam Peters about tanking, about Operation Lose Out 2.0. Look, I still am not happy that our team won its season finale, the 24-17 win at the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday to conclude going 5-12 in the NFL's 2025 regular season and result in the Commanders in the 2026 NFL Draft getting the number 7 overall pick as opposed to the number 5 overall pick. But we on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack and Adam Peters.
Obviously, the front office is about looking ahead. The coach is about looking in the moment. When you guys are in the position where you're eliminated from the playoffs or the season's going a certain way, do you weigh in and say, hey, maybe we need to get some younger guys in to see what we have next year, or even have a discussion about, hey, if we win a game in the last week, it could affect draft status and the importance perhaps of that, even if you say we're not going to worry about that? Do you weigh in on those matters?
Yeah, I told him the tank, and he just said no. That game was important. No. The game was important for us to win, so I'm really glad we won for a lot of different reasons. But in terms of just weighing in on personnel things, I think it goes back to what Q was saying. We talk all the time. We talk every single day, all day about, how can we do better, and I'll make suggestions and I'll say, oh, that's a good idea, or no, this is why we won't do that. But I think that's a constant dialogue between us, and there's no, we have a great respect for each other. So if I ask a question, he knows where it's coming from, and it's not coming from a bad place. It's either coming from trying to get information or just understanding. So, but yeah, we're always talking about that, every single week, regardless of our record, always trying to, sometimes I have ideas that I think are good and they're not. And he'll tell me why. And then sometimes they are good. So I think that's a healthy relationship that we'll always have. And I hope that, we'll continue to have.
Well, we hope that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn do have a healthy relationship. They certainly seem to have a healthy relationship. And yeah, I did enjoy the joke from Adam Peters about tanking, although not much is funny about the season that our team just had. Hello and welcome to this Tuesday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. We, over the next few installments of the podcast, are going to properly break down the many notable things that were said at the joint season-ending presser for Adam Peters and Dan Quinn on Monday evening. They covered a lot of ground, so we're going to take our time and do the conversation right. But coming up on this installment of the podcast, examination of comments from not just Peters and Quinn, but also Jayden Daniels. Next segment, discussion of comments from Peters and Quinn on what went wrong for the Commanders in their disappointing 2025 season, potential coaching staff changes, a specific defensive position that Peters is looking to upgrade, and more. The following segment, analysis of comments from Jayden Daniels, Adam Peters, and Dan Quinn on keeping Daniels healthy moving forward, and more, including Daniels revealing that a goal for him in the 2026 offseason is, quote, rebuilding myself from the ground up, end quote. What exactly did he mean by that? And also on the show, I'll talk Washington Capitals. They on Monday night ripped the Anaheim Ducks 7-4 at Capital One Arena in a hectic game that featured two notable fights and multiple Caps having big games. Second-line center Justin Sordiff had 5 points, 3 even-strength goals, and 2 primary assists as he notched the first regular season hat trick of his NHL career. The Great Eight, top-line right wing Alex Ovechkin, he scored 2 goals, and second-line left wing Connor McMichael, he had 4 assists. Before we get to feedback, are our rebuilding and tanking Washington Wizards about to make a big trade? NBA insider Mark Stein of the Stein Line on Substack, he on Monday afternoon reported that the Wizards have emerged as a legitimate potential trade destination for Atlanta's Trae Young. The trade would be centered around the Wizards' C.J. McCollum, who has an expiring contract. Young is under contract through next season via a 5-year Supermax contract, but the Wizards could take on the contract, presumably for draft capital, as the Wizards are set to have a ton of salary cap space next season. The Wizards are in what we call asset accumulation mode. That is precisely what they should be doing, and perhaps they're about to do some more. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Email from Sterling Porter, CPA, on What Now for the Commanders. Right, Sterling? Hello, Al. The defense is complete trash. I saw a lot of the same issues with the Eagles' second-team offense as we had with other first-team offenses. Yes, the Eagles' point total was low, but the defense was unimpressive at best. Complete overhaul is needed. Give Jordan McGee more snaps. The only other player really worth building around is Trey Amos. I haven't completely given up on Sainer still, but he has to play on the outside. On offense, this may sound crazy, but the only position we need to upgrade, in my opinion, is receiver. I think we need a guy who can get real separation. I do like Luke McCaffrey as a third receiver and Jalen Lane as a fourth receiver / returner. Brooks can fit in there too. I like the O-line, and I like what we have at running back and tight end as well. I think Sinnott and Bates can handle it, and we can add a capable third tight end. I would not extend Tunsil. I think Coleman can develop as a full-time left tackle by the end of next season. He is not a guard. To sum it up, get a receiver and focus on a defensive overhaul. What are your thoughts? Thanks for all you do. Praying blessings for you and your family. Happy New Year. Well, thank you, Sterling. Same to you. From a roster standpoint, there's no doubt that there's a lot more work that needs to be done on defense than on offense. The position groups on offense most in need of work are receiver and tight end. I would say tight end. I have hope for Ben Sinnott, but we need to see a lot more before he can be trusted as a TE1. The position groups on defense most in need of work are edge defender, cornerback, and safety. The entire secondary needs to be rethought and reimagined. It was such a mess for so much of this season. Email from Brian Young off our conversation on last Wednesday's show, episode 1229, with Washington, D.C. sports radio legend Andy Pollin, host of the Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, on if the Commanders' 2025 season is the franchise's most disappointing season since the end of the Redskins' glory days, and on why legendary former Skins offensive lineman Joe Jacoby still is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Writes Brian, Happy New Year, Al. Thanks for a great year of listening pleasure. Hope this year is even better for you and our beloved team. On the topic of disappointments, I would not classify this season or the team as a total disappointment, but would point to position groups instead. Case in point, the secondary is the biggest disappointment, especially with Mikey and Quan performing horribly. But this ties directly to the disappointment in the defensive coordinator in general. I can't call the offense a disappointment due to the injuries to JD5, Terry, and many others, but on the whole, I would not call this a total disappointment. However, I would refer to 2013 as my biggest disappointment as a whole, based on your comments with Andy Pollin. Just pure mismanagement, poor coaching, diva quarterback, and most importantly, an owner who did not deal with any of these issues professionally. 2013 shined the light on just how bad Dan Snyder really was, and that was the biggest disappointment. All the best in 2026, Al. Keep up the best pod in the D.C. area, and keep following D.C. sports so I don't have to. Thank you for the email, Brian. Yeah, the Skins 2013 season, to me, is the franchise's most disappointing season since the end of the glory days, which I define as the 1982 through 1992 seasons, and I go with that 2013 season because of the dysfunction and what it meant. Regarding the disappointment that was the 2025 Commanders defense, nothing to me was more disappointing than three key players each regressing big time from last season. Linebacker Frankie Louvu, cornerback Mikey Sainristil, and safety Quan Martin. There is a lot that went wrong for the defense this season, but those three key players each being a lot worse this season than he was last season was a big-time factor in the defense being so bad. And part of the disappointment is that we came out of the Commanders' 2024 season thinking that these three guys, Louvu, Sainristil, and Martin, could be cornerstone pieces for seasons to come. Now, who knows what to think? Hey, please consider subscribing to the podcast if you're not already doing that. Subscribing to the podcast costs nothing. Make sure that you never miss an episode and helps out the podcast a lot. And if you are already subscribing, thank you. We on Sunday had the Washington Commanders concluding going 5-12 in the NFL's 2025 regular season with a 24-17 win at the Philadelphia Eagles. We on Monday had a busy day at the Commanders team facility, what officially is Big Bear.ai Performance Center at Commanders Park in Ashburn, Virginia. On Monday was locker room cleanout day, marking the final sessions for Commanders players with reporters for months. And we on Monday evening had a joint season-ending press conference for General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn. The presser started around 5:10, lasted for about 35 minutes. Here were the opening statements of the presser. First, Dan Quinn's opening statement, and then Adam Peters' opening statement.
All right, good to see you guys. As we're getting rolling, I think as the season's over, a lot of would say, all right, now what? And for AP and I, we would say, man, it's just the beginning. We got a lot of work to do. And I know you'll ask, what changes are, being made, and we're not able to go there yet. Everything needs to be and is being thoroughly examined and discussed, and really our work is answering the question, what went wrong and what do we need to do to fix it, and make sure we never go through this again in a season like this. And so that's our sole focus, and what's kind of going to be driving us in the weeks ahead. So I just wanted to kick into that in gear with you. I know AP will hit a few things, and then we'll get the whole thing rocking.
Yeah, just to echo what DQ said, I mean, this season was a disappointment in a lot of ways, and certainly didn't meet our standards. And, we're going to do everything we can to not let that happen again. And that starts today with this offseason. So ready to attack it and ready to move forward.
So the Commanders, in going from 12-5 in the 2024 regular season to 5-12 in the 2025 regular season, suffered a 7-win drop-off, tying the franchise record for a drop-off from one regular season to the next. The Redskins went from 10-6 in the 2012 regular season to 3-13 in the 2013 regular season. We on Monday evening had this exchange between 7 News DC sports director Scott Abraham and Dan Quinn, and then we'll hear Adam Peters chime in.
I think the big question fans want to know here is, how do you go from a team that was one win away from going to the Super Bowl, and injuries aside, because every team goes through injuries. So how do you go from a team that was one win away from going to the Super Bowl to 5 wins? Like, what happened? Like, how can you do some self-reflection and aside from injuries?
Yeah, we're digging that as hard as we can, Scott, honestly, so we will never be in this situation or have a season like this again. So many factors to say, how do we play it better? How do we coach it better? How do we live it better together? One of the reasons that gives us so much insight for why we're going to play excellent football, it's the locker room. And when you go through, a terrible season, you find out a lot about guys, and you've been in the locker room, you've seen how tight and connected these guys are and how hard they want to fight for one another. So in the midst of a terrible season, I know that part is right. And if you have that part right, Scott, then I'm certain, with the changes, with the things that we need to do moving forward, we're not just trying to be good for 1 year, we're trying to do it as good as we can for a long time. And man, are there lessons from this season that we're going to apply in 26, 27, 28 and beyond. And that's what I'd want you and our fan base to know, that man, it was hard, and hard decisions have to be made, but if I can tell you how many lessons there are to gain, man, it's a crazy amount.
Adam, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what DQ said, but obviously it's not just one thing. It's not just the injuries. It's not just this. It's not just that. But, going through a season like this, which is terrible and certainly not even close to our standard, like Q said, that there's a lot of lessons that we learned, and a lot of lessons we'll apply moving forward in terms of, myself, just the decisions that I make on a daily basis, the decisions that we make in terms of our roster construction and all those different things. But we look at everything, and it's a good time to reflect, and we'll have a lot of time this offseason to really dig into all of that. We've looked at a lot throughout the season, but really kind of get together and say, what can we do better? And that's looking at everything, every single thing.
And we on the podcast in the coming days, we'll be doing a deep dive on the roster construction of Adam Peters as Commanders GM. But look, make no mistake, the number one reason for the Commanders' disappointing 2025 season is the team getting ravaged by injury. And I know that not everyone may want to hear that, and I get you potentially not wanting to hear that. And the team itself should not emphasize that. But the number one reason, by far, for the Commanders' disappointing 2025 season is the team getting ravaged by injury. That was not the only problem for the team, but that was the biggest problem, and there's not a doubt in my mind about that. Now, I mentioned the Skins' horrendous 2013 season. During the Skins' 2014 offseason, had a coaching staff overhaul, including the firing of Executive Vice President / head coach Mike Shanahan. Dan Quinn is not being fired, nor should he be fired, but we already have had the demotion of defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr. That was announced on November 10th. And now, what about offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury? On Monday's show, episode 1231, talked at length about the reports from this past weekend suggesting that the Commanders in this 2026 offseason could part with Kliff Kingsbury even if he doesn't get a head coaching job in the NFL's 2026 coaching cycle. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN and Dan Quinn.
Don't know about the changes, but when would you like to get those finalized? And what goes when you're going about assessing coaches, coordinators? How do you go about assessing them to get to whatever decision you want?
Yeah, for sure. It's after a hard season like this, hard decisions are made, but you want to go through everything from evaluation, the communication, the performances, and so we begin that. As coaches and the coaches and scouts, we get together, we talk a lot about the players. We had the exit interviews today, John, so Adam and I also visited with a lot of players, and that's part of how we're gathering all of our information. So all of these processes are really important, and we just want to make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure we're hitting all the marks to get it right.
Yeah, unfortunately, during this 30-plus minute press conference on Monday evening was just one question specific to the topic of Kliff Kingsbury. That question came via this back and forth between Commanders insider Nikki Javala of The Athletic and Dan Quinn, and then we'll hear Adam Peters chime in.
Just for both of you, just looking back over this past season, how would you assess the work that Kliff did with the offense?
Yeah, we're going through all the coaches, Kliff offensively, defensively, on the teams wide, and so that's really what we're digging into, Nikki, to find what's best, how do we do it, where do we find spaces to improve, and for Kliff, for Joe, for Larry, for all of us, that's our main focus, so we're never in this space again, and that's what we want to dig in hard on.
And if there's, for both of you, if there's one thing that you could go back and redo, I know everything's 2020 in hindsight, but injuries aside, is there one thing that you wish you had done differently or anything like that?
Yeah, there's probably a million things, when you think about it, when you don't have a good season. So it's hard to nail it down to one. I would say looking back, the things that I'm not pleased with is our turnover margin and to not create enough takeaways, not doing a good enough job with the ball. Those are the things that come to mind first. We want to play bold, we want to play aggressive, but that part, do you have to more emphasis, more things in for it? That would be one that comes to mind first. The one thing, there's too many to list. There's like paper cuts, or I don't know how the saying goes, death by a million paper cuts. There's, when you're in this space, you're constantly evaluating and, okay, where do we go? And even yesterday, I had said, I'd hope we'd find some of these winning time moments before the offseason. And so yesterday, being behind in the fourth quarter, getting a touchdown, getting a stop, getting another touchdown, defensive stop, that's what I was looking for. And so to see some of that applied through the practice, I was pleased to see. I thought it was a step in the right direction. We're not waiting till the offseason to get this shit fixed. It has to be addressed and worked on. And so I was pleased to see that, no matter who is in.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what he said. I think, taking care of the ball, doing a better job tackling, but the fundamentals of the game and our play style, I think, slipped a little bit. But those are things that we really need to hit on and harp, from the very beginning and make sure that we're upholding that standard week in and week out.
Yeah, the Commanders had a terrible turnover differential this season. The team for the 2025 regular season was number 31 out of 32 NFL teams in turnover differential, minus 13. But Dan Quinn, in that first answer in the cut that I just played, had a chance to endorse Kliff Kingsbury, to praise Kliff Kingsbury, and Quinn didn't do that. And that seems telling. This Kliff Kingsbury issue is a big deal. I did not expect to get much out of Adam Peters or Dan Quinn on Monday evening on the Kingsbury situation, but I do wish that Peters and Quinn would have been asked more about this. I mean, NFL insider Diana Rossini of The Athletic, she in a piece that came out this past Saturday morning, had the following, quote, "Some in the building say there's been a disconnect between Kingsbury and general manager Adam Peters," end quote. It would have been nice to get Adam Peters' response to that report, even if the report is fake news. And I hope that the report is fake news. But let's hear Adam Peters say that the report is fake news. Get him on record. Let's hear Adam Peters refute the report. But beyond the report, are the Commanders about to part with Kliff Kingsbury? This is a big deal. I've made my feelings clear. I like what Kingsbury has done over his 2 seasons as the team's offensive coordinator. The team's offense for the 2024 regular season was elite. The team's offense for the 2025 regular season was not nearly as bad as the offense should have been given all of the injuries. I mean, the Commanders for the 2025 regular season were number 16 in the NFL in expected points added per play per RBSTM.com, and were number 12 in the NFL in yards per play. Not bad considering all of the injuries. What happens with Kingsbury has all of a sudden become one of the biggest storylines of the team's 2026 offseason, and this was not at all an expected storyline of the team's 2026 offseason as of just a few days ago. Another storyline for the team's 2026 offseason is what the team does at defensive coordinator. There are a lot of potential defensive coordinator candidates out there for the Commanders, including 2 guys who just got fired as head coaches. The Atlanta Falcons on Sunday night announced having fired head coach Raheem Morris. So the Arizona Cardinals on Monday afternoon announced having fired head coach Jonathan Gannon. We on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider J.P. Finley of NBC4 and Adam Peters, and then we'll hear Dan Quinn chime in.
You guys talk about your comprehensive approach a lot. Adam, I'm curious, what's your role in the coaching staff decisions?
I'm really just here to support DQ. The coaching staff is DQ's, and I'm always here to help, like during the season and off season, however I can, to help support him and help him make the decisions that he needs to make, and certainly wherever he needs. So it's not, I'm not involved in whatever decision it is. It's always DQ's call, and I have his back on whatever he wants to do.
There's not silos here, JP, with coaching and scouts. We connect, we talk a lot, we visit a lot, and so it's one of the things I enjoy most is those conversations. It's different perspective, different points of view, so it's as collaborative as I've been a part of.
Yeah.
Interesting, though, that Adam Peters made it sound like who the Commanders hire as defensive coordinator will be a Dan Quinn call. Adam Peters is in charge of Commanders football operations, but at least according to what Peters said there, who the Commanders hire as defensive coordinator will be a Dan Quinn call. What would the team be looking for in a defensive coordinator? We on Monday evening had this exchange between Commanders insider Liam Griffin of the Washington Times and Dan Quinn.
For both of you, I know you're not ready to address potential coaching or personnel changes, but when you're looking at adding coaches or adding coordinators to the staff, what kind of traits are you looking to prioritize in that process?
When you're putting a staff together, like prior to coming here, Liam, you wanted to, one, it's the talent of the coach, but also the fit. And it's not a hell of a lot different than, like from Adam's side and a player to adding it to the group. You've heard us talk about Commanders, and it's really no different on that side. It's the fit, it's the talent. What do they bring that's unique? And that's a great question, man. But somebody to communicate, collaborate, has unique skill set to teach. I think that's the number one top of the pile when you're teaching. Part of this is why you need to know this specific skill. This is for the game, for the coaches that make it come to life. I think that's what you see when the players can perform at their best. So those are a few of the things.
Well, how possible is it that the Commanders will not hire a defensive coordinator and will stick with Dan Quinn as defensive coordinator. The Commanders in the now concluded 2025 regular season played 7 games with Dan Quinn as defensive coordinator. The defense with him as defensive coordinator was better than with Joe Witt as defensive coordinator, but the opposing offenses also were a lot less fierce, and the defense with Quinn as defensive coordinator still had plenty of bad moments and plenty of bad games. We on Monday evening had this back and forth between Mitch Tischler of Monumental Sports Network and Dan Quinn.
Dan, for you, in your head coaching career, you've kind of done it both ways where you've been both head coach and DC or had somebody that you can delegate to. Is it on the table that next year you would stay in the same role that you kind of finished this season, or do you think it's better as a head coach to be able to delegate and kind of be big picture?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mitch. I think what I've learned is make the best decision for what the team needs. And so as we're going through this, man, a lot to gain through these exit interviews, where we're at. And but that's really where I'm at. I'm not into that space yet. I'm definitely doing this. I'm definitely not. What I do know that I'll be heavily involved, one way or another. And that's part that I do enjoy. But, I think I'll keep an open mind, as I'm going through the next, parts of the process.
And you've hired a couple different staffs throughout your career. How do you balance going after coaches and personnel folks that versus guys who might be able to bring in kind of new ideas, different ideas to a team as a whole? How do you balance kind of?
Yeah, I think you want to always have like a contingency planning system ahead for when, changes are made. And so you want to think about those people who are fresh, who's, on ideas, who's within your own, building that knows statuses to go. And so you keep that in mind, but you're always just kind of, watching and learning and growing, and you have to adapt. And some of the things that were effective, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, evolve and change. And it's kind of one of the fun parts of coaching. And through the years, I've met some fantastic coaches that I didn't know before. And, one that left this year was Tavita. And so when I got here, he was somebody that I wanted to hire and to be here. And so, man, I'm super grateful. I learned a lot from Tavita, and that's just like one small example amongst others, a Bobby Ingram or others that, I may not have known or I'd known of them. And then to actually, go shoulder to shoulder in a couple of years, then you find out a lot.
Well, if the Commanders do hire a defensive coordinator, it'll be really interesting to see if they hire someone with ties to Dan Quinn, like Raheem Morris, or if the team departs from the Dan Quinn family. Does the team go in a different direction in terms of, the Dan Quinn style of defense? Because so far, that style of defense has not worked out here. But Dan Quinn, in that first answer we heard right there, again expressed an openness to remaining as defensive coordinator. He now has done that multiple times, and he does have an excellent track record as an NFL defensive coordinator. The 2013 and 2014 seasons with the Seattle Seahawks and the 2021 through 2023 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. All 5 of those Dan Quinn coordinated defenses were very good. Those Seahawks defenses were outstanding. As we are talking about what the Commanders are going to do at defensive coordinator, what are they going to do in terms of defensive personnel? Oh, by the way, what about the players on defense? As we talked about during the opening segment of the show, there from a roster perspective is a lot more work that needs to be done on defense than on offense. And there is work that needs to be done on offense, but there is a lot more work that needs to be done on defense. We on Monday evening had this exchange between David Aldridge of The Athletic and Adam Peters.
Specifically on the defensive side of the ball, what are you going to be looking at and attacking?
I think there's a lot of spots I think where we can look at. I think certainly another pass rusher would be something we'd definitely be looking for, whether that's the draft or free agency. I think we have a lot of good options in both of those areas.
Okay, so Adam Peters not being shy about saying that the Commanders need help at edge defender. Yes, they do. Their 2 starting edge defenders missed the majority of the regular season. Dietrich Wise Jr. suffered a season-ending quadriceps injury in the Commanders' 27-18 loss at the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football on September 11th. And Dorrance Armstrong suffered a season-ending knee injury in the Commanders' 44-22 loss at the Dallas Cowboys on October 19th. Wise is set to be an unrestricted free free agent in the 2026 offseason. Armstrong is under contract for one more season, and already we as Commanders fans are getting quite giddy at the possibility of at least one of the top edge defenders in the 2026 NFL Draft being available to our team with its number 7 overall pick. Have you already begun your 2026 NFL Draft prep? I'm sure at least some of you have, because some of you are sick in the head like I am. But the top 2 edge defenders in the 2026 NFL Draft appear to be Reuben Bain Jr. of Miami and David Bailey of Texas Tech. Of course, both guys could be gone at 7. That's part of why losing at the Eagles would have been nice, but I digress. Today's law group, Accident and Injury Lawyers. It has been a Washington, D.C. institution for decades. If you feel that you've been wronged, if you think that you've been wronged but aren't sure, contact the NACE Law Group, Accident and Injury Lawyers, and schedule a no-obligation appointment. Call 202-902-7611 or visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com and tell the NACE Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. Founded in 1979, the NACE Law Group offers fierce advocacy on behalf of medical malpractice, birth injury, and personal injury victims. Led by the great Chris Nace, the NACE Law Group is focused on providing exceptional care and counsel for those who need such things the most. The NACE Law Group fights for what it believes in, you, your family, and your future. You with the NACE Law Group have an experienced advocate on your side. The NACE Law Group has secured millions of dollars in verdict and settlement amounts for clients to better enable them to care for themselves and their families. Call 202-902-7611 or visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com and tell the NACE Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. That's 202-902-7611 or WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com, and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. The NACE Law Group, Accident and Injury Lawyers. So in much the same way that the Washington Commanders' record for the 2025 regular season, 5-12, was an ugly inverse of the team's record for the 2024 regular season, 12-5, so too was what happened with the team's QB1, Jayden Daniels. He, off his all-time great 2024 rookie NFL season, had a disaster of a second NFL season. Daniels, in the NFL's 2025 regular season, played in just 7 of the Commanders' 17 games. He got injured in 4 of the 7 games, and his overall performance over those 7 games was not nearly as good as his overall performance last season. There is not a Washington fan on the planet who would have signed up for this second season for Jayden Daniels off what he did last season. Now, my hope is that this season simply was an ugly outlier. Jayden Daniels, over 5 seasons as a collegiate QB1, played in 55 of a possible 57 games. He last season played in all 20 of the Commanders' regular season and postseason games. His overall track record is one of durability. What happened with him this season hopefully was an aberration, never to be repeated. But what happened this season does fuel the concern about Daniels' body holding up given his body type and playing style. And I'm not going to be a phony about this. The number one reason that I wanted the Commanders with the number 2 overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft to take Drake May over Jayden Daniels was my concern about Daniels' body holding up given his body type and playing style. I really liked each guy as an NFL quarterback prospect. The separator for me was my concern about Daniels' body holding up given his body type and playing style, and we'll just have to see. Jayden Daniels missed 2 games due to a left knee injury that he suffered in the Commanders' 27-18 loss at the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football on September 11th. Daniels missed 1 game caused by a right hamstring injury that he suffered in the Commanders' 44-22 loss at the Dallas Cowboys on October 19th. Daniels missed 3 games caused by a dislocated left elbow that he suffered in the Commanders' 38-14 loss to the Seattle Seahawks at Northwest Stadium on Sunday Night Football on November 2nd. And then Daniels re-injured the left elbow in the 31-0 loss at the Minnesota Vikings on December 7th, though he suffered no structural damage. But head coach Dan Quinn, during his day after the game press conference on December 15th, announced that the team was shutting down Daniels for the rest of the season. Jayden Daniels on Monday morning spoke to reporters on what was a locker room cleanout day at the team facility in Ashburn, Virginia, off the team's 24-17 win at the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday to conclude a 5-12 regular season. We on Monday morning had this exchange between Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack and Jayden Daniels, and then you'll hear a follow-up back and forth between Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN and Daniels.
How do you feel physically? We haven't obviously seen you on the field in a minute.
I'm good. I'm healthy.
Did it help? How did it help you the last several weeks just to be out there practicing? We know they want to see you on the field, and you want to be out there. But what kind of growth do you feel maybe even in the last month?
I think you just get a different perspective watching the games, and you understand the importance of each and every play, how important each play are in the game. You only get 65 plays max. I think that's kind of what the average is. So you kind of just see the importance of each and every play. You kind of learn from a different perspective.
And then there's been a lot of talk about Kliff, his future, with a head coaching job or whatever. What have been your thoughts on him as a coordinator and just in the offense?
I mean, I love working with Kliff. Me and him have a special relationship. We kind of built that over his past 2 years. I kind of just wish I was out there more to play for him this past year. So, I mean, that's kind of the focus for me in this offseason is just rebuilding myself from the ground up and, hopefully go out there. And that's the most important thing, to be available for my team.
Okay, so three things from all of that especially stood out to me. First of all, Jayden Daniels, in response to how he's feeling, quote, "I'm good, I'm healthy," end quote. This did become apparent as he practiced, albeit in limited fashion, throughout the time during which he was shut down for the season. But he could have played in at least one or two more games this season. Now, I'm not mad at the Commanders having shut him down for the season, but I do think that it's safe to say that he could have played in at least one or two more games this season. Also, Jayden Daniels, when asked about offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury, offered support for Kingsbury. Daniels said that he and Kingsbury have, quote, "a special relationship," end quote. No surprise, but that is worth noting, and that does echo what his mom posted on X on Sunday evening. Jayden Daniels' mom, Regina Jackson, she on Sunday evening, quote, posted a post from the Commanders with the following, quote, "Headed in the right direction. Let's go. Officially loading JD5/KK Season 3. 2 heart emojis, hashtag raise hail, hashtag HTTC, hashtag HTTR, end quote. And then also from Jayden Daniels was him saying that a goal for him in the 2026 offseason is, quote, "rebuilding myself from the ground up," end quote. And that, to me, was the most interesting thing that Daniels said during this session with reporters on Monday morning. What exactly did he mean by that? Rebuilding myself from the ground up. Was he talking about, adding more muscle? Was he talking about altering his playing style? Rebuilding myself from the ground up. That could mean a lot of things, but that sounds dramatic, right? Rebuilding myself from the ground up. We on Monday morning had this exchange between 7 News DC sports director Scott Abraham and Jayden Daniels, and then you'll hear an exchange between Ben Standig and Daniels, and then you'll hear another exchange between Abraham and Daniels.
You said you're going to rebuild yourself in the offseason. What does that look like? What does that mean?
I guess you guys have to see it when we get back, but, kind of just take some time away and, just focus on my mental and focus on everything else and spend time with my loved ones while also working out and figure out those spaces I need to grow in.
What have you mapped out for yourself for this offseason in terms of training or just personal stuff?
I don't want to give none of my secrets away. Kind of just go out there and you'll figure it out.
Is there something specifically you want to kind of focus on and work on?
I just want to be a better person and better version of myself in general.
All right, so Jayden Daniels not wanting to specify what he meant by, quote, "rebuilding myself from the ground up," end quote. But that certainly stood out. I mean, Jayden Daniels, during his sessions with reporters, rarely says anything of note. That he said this on Monday morning was impossible to ignore. So as we try to figure out what he meant by, quote, "rebuilding myself from the ground up," end quote, what we know and what Daniels knows and what everyone else with the Commanders knows is that what happened this season, Daniels playing in just 7 of the team's 17 regular season games due to getting injured 4 different times, cannot happen again. if God forbid something like that happens next season, the whole idea of this guy being the answer at quarterback for the Commanders is no longer true. The whole idea of, he being him is no longer true. We cannot have a repeat of this season next season. Quarterbacks get injured. We get that. Some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL are guys who have been injured a good bit. Think the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson. Think the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow. But being out for 10 of the team's 17 regular season games is brutal. And Jayden Daniels recognizes that. We on Monday morning had this exchange between John Keim and Jayden Daniels.
Jay, does a year like this motivate you differently than others?
It's going my third year, so obviously I was motivated last year to get back, so it just didn't go that way, so I would say it would, but I don't have a lot of years to kind of just go on that and be like, no, this year is different than, my third year, so each and every year I'm motivated to go out there and play the game I love.
All right, and we on Monday morning had this exchange between Scott Abraham and Jayden Daniels.
With these injuries that happened to you this year, do you feel like you have to play any differently going forward?
I think you always grow and mature. The best ability for myself is availability. So I can go out there and showcase my God-given abilities. And, if I'm not out there, then, I'm kind of hurting the team. And my number one job is to protect the team.
Absolutely. Jayden Daniels, of course, knows that he needs to stay healthy. Now, Jayden Daniels, surprisingly, was not much of a topic during the joint season-ending press conference for General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn on Monday evening, but we, during the presser, did have this exchange between Barry Svrluga, columnist for The Washington Post, and Adam Peters, and then you'll hear an exchange between Svrluga and Dan Quinn.
Adam, is there a way to come up with kind of a long-term plan to keep Jayden upright and make sure he plays 15 or 17 games rather than 7?
Is there a way? I think really, and this might be a better question for DQ, but from me, I think is just continuing to, from a personnel or GM perspective, is continuing to put good players around him. Whether that's in front of him at the O-line, it's running backs to control the ball and control the clock and not put it all on his shoulders and get in second and third and manageables. It's receivers that he can trust and throw to so that he's not holding on to the ball longer. And so from my perspective, it's just getting good players around him, getting a good defense on the other side, so he's not it's not all on his shoulders to win the game. So DQ can probably talk more schematically, but in terms of from me, I think those are the things that I can and need to do to help him out.
Involved in those discussions of like, hey, this is how we want you to play. This is who we're surrounding you with. How much of it participate?
Yeah, very much so, that part. And even after his injury, we specifically said this is the area, this is what we're going to work on. And as opposed to waiting till the off season, we decided let's get a jump start on that. So very much so will he be a part of it, but I would say not only will he, we already are going there. And so it's really important. We know what he brings to us, what he means to us, and I think it's all encompassing, in how we go play the game. So we're fully committed to finding ways to continue to do that.
Jayden Daniels and the Commanders have got to figure out how to lessen the contact that Daniels takes when he plays. You're never going to completely eradicate the contact, but you got to lessen the contact. He's taking too much contact via taking sacks and quarterback hits and via scrambling and via executing option runs and design runs. Balancing, maximizing his elite mobility while lessening the contact that he takes. That is the task. That is the goal. That is the mission. Not easy. I totally get that. But this balance is a balance that needs to be struck. By the way, the Commanders on Monday afternoon announced having signed 11 players to reserve/futures contracts. Among those players, receivers Ja'Cory Brooks and Jacoby Jones, interior defensive lineman Ricky Barber, edge defender TJ Magiranyanga, and cornerbacks Darius Rush and Carlin Viggers. We had quite the anticipation for the Washington Capitals game against the Anaheim Ducks at Capital One Arena on Monday night at 7. This was the first game between the two teams since the Caps' 4-3 shootout loss at the Ducks late night on Friday night, December 5th, a game during which Caps winger Ryan Leonard suffered a shoulder injury on a vicious blindside hit by Ducks defenseman Jacob Trouba in the first period. Leonard missed 7 games. The Caps, for this game against the Ducks at Capital One Arena on Monday night, had perhaps their number one enforcer, defenseman Dylan McElrath, active, as opposed to what he usually is, a healthy scratch. Dylan McElrath, he is listed as being 6'5" and 240 pounds. His nickname is The Undertaker. And that's all that you need to know about this guy. The dude's nickname is The Undertaker. And The Undertaker and the Caps were victorious 1 month to the day of that shootout loss at the Ducks on December 5th. The Caps on January 5th notched a 7-4 win over the Ducks at Capital One Arena on Monday night. The Caps in the NHL's 2025-2026 regular season now are 22-15-6. There was so much to this game. Caps second line center Justin Sourdif, he had 5 points, 3 even-strength goals, and 2 primary assists as he registered the first regular season hat trick of his NHL career. Sourdif scored an even-strength goal 15:56 into the first period, scored an even-strength goal 18:58 into the first period, and scored an even-strength goal 7:30 into the second period, giving him 8 goals in this regular season. Here was the call of his third goal of the game. John Walton and Ken Sabrin on the Washington Capitals radio network.
In the Washington zone, and a puck for Justin Sourdif. I mean, these guys are flying right now. Back to center. Here he comes again. Sourdif coming right up the middle. Across the Anaheim line. Dropped off to Van Riemsdyk. Center to McMichael. On across. They score! And it's a hat trick! Justin Sourdif! 3 goals for number 34! Oh, baby, it's 4-1! Washington, have a day, Justin Sourdif!
What an outstanding play. He creates the whole thing, gets speed through the neutral zone, drops it off, and then a tic-tac-toe play. Ryan Leonard, what an unselfish play that was. Seeing Sourdif right in the middle, he could have shot that puck, puts it over to him, right on his stick in the back of the net.
We are watching this young man grow up right in front of us. More goals than any NHL rookie since New Year's Eve, and he just tacked onto it. Goal number 6, goal number 7, and goal number 8. You bet it's tricky. 4-1 Washington, and the biggest smile in the District of Columbia right now is on the Washington bench for their number 34.
What a night for Justin Sourdif. He became just the second rookie in Caps history to have at least 5 points in a regular season game. The Caps this past June 26th announced having traded a second-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft and a sixth-round pick in the 2027 NHL Draft to the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers for Justin Sourdif. The Caps 2 days later, June 28th, announced having signed Sourdif to a 2-year, $1.65 million contract, and the guy on Monday night had a 5-point night. But he was not the only Caps player with a multi-goal game. The Great Eight had a multi-goal game. Caps top-line right wing Alex Ovechkin, he scored 2 goals, giving him 17 goals in this regular season. Ovi scored an even-strength goal 8:52 into the second period and scored an even-strength empty net goal 19:18 into the third period. Also, he had a team-high 7 total shot attempts, including a team-high 4 shots on goal, and he had 4 hits. Did commit a first-period hooking minor, but great to see the Great Eight score 2 goals. Ovi came into this game having scored just 1 goal over his last 14 games. The aforementioned Ryan Leonard, he served as the Caps' second-line right wing. He scored a goal, scored an even-strength goal 5:54 into the second period for his 9th goal in this regular season, and he had a primary assist. And when it came to The Undertaker, so Dylan McElrath did get a 5-minute fighting major in the second period, but that was for fighting with Ducks forward Ross Johnston. However, Caps' third-line left wing Brandon Duhaime, he got a 5-minute fighting major in the first period for fighting with, yes, Jacob Trouba. So the Caps got their revenge. Here was John Walton on the call of the Duhaime-Trouba fight.
Finding a way to get it done, and now Brandon Duhaime off the jump is going to drop the mitts with guess who? Jacob Trouba. And Trouba had to know this was coming. I know both teams were playing it down like it wasn't going to happen, but Brandon Duhaime saw the opportunity here. Jacob Trouba, who took out Ryan Leonard. And Brandon was something along the lines of, this one's for you, Lenny. They'll both stay standing at the end here, but Trouba needed to atone for the hit 1 month ago today at Honda Center, and Brandon Duhaime was more than happy to try and take care of it.
Yes, he was, and I cannot tell you how much I love that at Capital One Arena during Caps games, what you hear in the background when there's a fight on the ice is the theme song for WWE legend Stone Cold Steve Austin. That is outstanding. Also, Caps second line left wing Connor McMichael, he had 4 assists, giving him 20 assists in this regular season, and he went 7-2 on faceoffs. Now, the Caps won this game 7-4. Despite getting demolished in the puck possession battle, this was so odd. The Caps won 7-4 despite having just 29 shots on goal to the Ducks 45, and Pernatral Statrick having just 39 5-on-5 shot attempts to the Ducks 73, including just 7 5-on-5 high danger shot attempts to the Ducks 13. The Caps starting goaltender was their number 2 goaltender, Charlie Lindgren. He stopped 41 of the 45 shots on goal that he faced. The Caps went 3 for 3 on the penalty kill, did go 0 for 2 on the power play. And, oh, by the way, the Caps for this game were without 2 key wingers. Tom Wilson did not play due to a lower body injury, and Alexi Protas did not play for a second consecutive game due to a lower body injury. Remember, the Caps remained without center Pierre-Luc Dubois. He on November 7th underwent surgery to address injuries to his abdominal and adductor muscles. Was expected to miss 3 to 4 months. The Caps, for this win over the Ducks, had just one healthy scratch, defenseman Declan Chisholm. Next up for the Caps, home to the Dallas Stars, Wednesday night at 7. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Wednesday show, episode 1233, will include a lot for you on the Washington Commanders. Also on Wednesday show, I'll talk Washington Wizards and Georgetown basketball. The Wizards are home to the Orlando Magic Tuesday night at 7. Georgetown is at DePaul Tuesday night at 8. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday.
I told him the tank, and he just said no. That game was important. The game was important for us to win, so I'm really glad we won for a lot of different reasons.